Real nigga, I ain't really with the chit chat. Nigga got a problem, we can meet, we can fix that. So this whole night, say you want his bitch back. I don't give a fuck, nigga, I already hit that. Down only 42, we don't miss that. I'ma sober up a little later when I get back. He a snitch, I just heard him on the dispatch. And the paint with any nigga, it's a mismatch. I was sliding on the holes in the mongoose. Before I mix the paper in New York with the font too.
Yo, what's good, y'all? It's Way Legacy. Today I want to talk about something that's been on my mind for a minute. As you can see by the title and thumbnail, I want to be talking about my top 10 shooter guards in the NBA. This is the part 2 to my top 10 point guards video, which you should check out if you haven't seen it already. I'm going to be doing the rest of the positions, so stick around if you're interested in that. But before we get started, let's show love to the honorable mentions. Terry Rozier, Colin Sexton, and Fred VanVleet. Now that we got those out the way, let's get into the top 10. At 10, we have CJ McCollum. CJ's been a perennial 20-point per game scorer for many years now. Any other year, I would have had him higher up on this list, but that's definitely not to say he's gotten worse or anything. He's actually coming off of arguably the best season of his career. He started off really hot before he got injured, averaging about 27 points per game. He cooled off after his injury, but he was still a really good 3-level scorer. I'm not very sure if you could win with him as your second best player, but I do know he would be a great addition on any team. Up next, we have Shea Gill Alexander. Shea has emerged as one of the most promising young players in the league. He's improved every year of his career since his rookie season. With the loss of Chris Paul, he stepped into a bigger role last season, increasing his production while still being really efficient. He has really good touch around the rim, and I'm impressed with the way his jump shot is progressing. He's also an improved passer, making great strides as a playmaker. Hopefully he's fully healthy and can play more games next season. He was great this year, but I'd like a bigger sample size. I'm really interested to see what OKC has planned. He has great potential, and I can see him moving up on this list for years to come. At 8, we have Klay Thompson. Now, I'm sure we all know what Klay is capable of. Calling him an elite shooter would probably be an understatement. He's never shot under 40% from 3 in his career. Personally, I think he's the second greatest shooter of all time. He's by far the least ball-dominant player on this list. He doesn't need the ball in his hands to be effective, especially because he moves really well without the ball. He's also prone to catching fire. Once he has the hot hand, it's really hard to stop him. He's also a really good perimeter defender. His skill set basically makes him a perfect fit for any team in the league. I would typically have him higher, but as you all know, we haven't seen him in 2 years. And I don't think that'll necessarily affect his game because he doesn't rely on athleticism, but I think the guys ahead of him are just gotten better in that time span. Hopefully he returns 100%. At 7, I have Jalen Brown. Jalen is another one of those guys that's been steadily improving every year. Since his rookie season, you could see he had the potential to be a great player. The great improvement in his jump shot and his overall shot creation has turned him into a really good scorer. He's been able to shoot, but this is for sure the best his shot has been. He's also shown that he could be a great two-way player. Although I think his off-ball defense could use a little work, he's a really good on-ball defender. I really hope he continues to grow as a player. My only real issue with him is that he isn't much of a playmaker. His free throw shooting isn't the best, but that's also been improving every year. Overall, he's just a really good player, and I could easily see him moving up on this list. Up next, we have Zach LaVine. He's been getting overlooked for a couple years now, and playing for the Bulls is a big part of that. He's coming off of a career year, emerging as one of the league's best scorers, finishing at 7th in points per game. He could always shoot, but last year he showed he could be one of the best shooters in the league. And he's not just taking these regular-ass catch-and-shoot threes. Like, he's taking pull-up threes in people's faces with a hand up. And he's prone to get hot, so it gets really hard to stop. He's also a good finisher. We all know his bounce is insane. He can jump out the gym. His overall defense isn't the best. Like, on ball, he's pretty decent, but off ball, he really needs some work. His playmaking was something that really needed to improve. But with the Bulls' new additions, it's really not as important. I think they'll do good this year since he doesn't have to carry the offensive load. I could definitely see him moving up on this list depending on how well his game translates to the playoffs. At 5, I have Bradley Beal. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you, I'm really not that high on Bradley Beal. But I feel inclined to show respect to the guy who, for the past 2 years, has only been outscored by Steph Curry and James Harden, 2 of the greatest scorers ever. Honestly, this part in the list is where I really started having trouble. This is where it really gets debatable. The guys that I have ahead of Brad, I feel like really just elevate their team, especially in more ways than scoring. And that's not to take anything away from him. Brad is a great 3-level scorer. He can be effective both on and off the ball. His splits are actually pretty impressive, especially considering he shoots at such a high volume. His playmaking is decent. He definitely has regressed as a defender, mostly due to effort, but when you're carrying an offensive load like that, it's understandable. I'd honestly like to see him somewhere else where he could be like the number 2 guy, but it looks like he'd rather have his career rot in Washington, which, shit, get your bag, I guess. Up next is one of my favorite players in the league, Devin Booker. He's a guy I've been following since college, and all I can say is he's special. He's a 3-level scorer, being able to score from pretty much everywhere on the court, but he really loves that mid-range area. He probably have one of the deepest bags in the league. He's also a really solid playmaker, especially in pick-and-roll situations. He's not the best defender, but I feel like people take it too far calling him a liability. I'm really glad he's finally getting the recognition he deserves. Being on a losing Suns team really had people underrating him for a while. He's been playing at an all-star level since around 2017, but for the most part, people consider him an empty stats guy. But with the Suns making it all the way to the finals last season, that narrative quickly changed. He was arguably the Suns' best player, depending on how you feel about Chris Paul. If you wanted to put him higher on this list, especially above the guy that I have next, I will completely understand. Next is Donovan Mitchell. He's a guy I used to be pretty critical of, mainly because I feel like he's been the same player like his whole career so far. Like, I felt like I wasn't seeing no real improvement, like no big strides. But I sat back and thought about it and realized this dude has been nice since he came in the league. He definitely has made improvements though, they've just been minimal, at least in my eyes. Last season was definitely a career year for him. He's a really good scorer and his three-point shooting was the best it's ever been, taking almost 9 a game. He's really good in the regular season, but I think what separates him from the players I have under is the way he elevates his game in the playoffs. And when I say elevate, I mean really elevate. Like, this guy is really a playoff performer. The impact that he had on his team last season is undeniable. Once he came back from injury in the first round, the Utah Jazz looked like a whole different team. The Grizzlies really had no answer for him. And despite losing to the Clippers in 6, he still managed to put up an efficient 35 a game. I really go back and forth with him and Devin Booker like every day. Like, I feel like Devin Booker is a more skilled player. But when Mitchell has all these crazy high scoring series, it's hard to put people over him. He'll be making this list for a long time. At number 2, I have Paul George. And I already hear you bitch ass niggas in the comments.
Playoff P, more like pandemic P.
Shut up.
All that trolling shit aside, Paul George is an amazing player. Has he had underperformances in the playoffs? Yes, nobody is denying that. But you can't deny what he brings to the table. First off, he's one of the best shooters in the league, which I feel like needs to be talked about more. Definitely an underrated passer. I'm not saying he's elite or even great, but definitely deserves a little more credit. He's a good shot creator, especially with those handles, man. I love his handles. He definitely could be a better one, but a good one nonetheless. He can play both on and off the ball, which is super valuable. And he's one of the best wing defenders in the league. And he showed this past season that he can still play at a high level in the playoffs. He really stepped up once Kawhi went down with that ACL injury. So for the people that have a problem with his underperformances in the playoffs, you at least got to acknowledge what he has done good. He's inconsistent, but when he's good, he's really good. Also, looking back at this, I know some people have him as a small forward. Well, I have him as a fucking shooter guard. Cry about it in the comments. There shouldn't be any surprises about this. James Harden is the best shooting guard in the league. I know there's people that's going to say he's a point guard, but I put Kyrie on my top 10 point guards list. So for the sake of the video, we have him at shooting guard. We all know what he's capable of. Top 3 scorer in the league with an argument for number 1. Obviously, his scoring numbers are down because he took the playmaking role in Brooklyn, but even then, he still managed to put up 25 a game. He's one of the best passers in the league, which is probably my favorite thing about him. The combination of his scoring and passing easily makes him a top 5 playmaker. He was dog shit in the Bucks series, but obviously he was injured and shouldn't have been out there in the first place. If he stays healthy, they win the series. But I've said it before and I'll say it again, that's just hypotheticals. There's really no legit argument for putting any of these guys over Harden. He's the only guy on this list I consider a superstar. I'd say his spot is safe for a couple more years. With that being said, those are my top 10 shooting guards in the NBA. I try to keep the explanations a little more brief this time. I know you guys don't want to sit around watching a long ass video, especially just for a top 10. If there's anything you disagree with me on, let me know. I'll cook your ass in the comments. I have a top 10 small forwards list coming after this, so be on the lookout for that. I'm also trying to hit 100 subs, so I appreciate it if y'all show some love. With that being said, thanks for stopping by. Hopefully you come back.
It's a once, chop it, don't fight back. I got your bitch. You know I'm like that, shorty a treat. You cannot wipe that, fuck her and leave. Tell her be right back, fuck it and leave. Tell her be right back, hop in the V.